So I'm Adam Norrie. I'm the founder and CEO of Australis. We're a retail-based investment platform. We're currently under development. We're due to launch Q3 this year. We've had a few changes to our plan, actually, from where we were initially actually set out to. We were meant to launch last month, but coronavirus has kind of hit us all a little bit hard. So, we've fallen into that bracket for sure. So I'm Adam. I'm 22. I'm probably the youngest guy you're going to have feature on Blockchain Rock Omri. Well, I hope to be.
But you're turning 23, well, at the time we're recording this in 2 days, right? And hopefully we will release it actually on your birthday. So happy birthday, Adam.
Thank you very much.
From the staff of Blockchain Rock.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm happy, man. I mean, 23, it's a big milestone. Not quite 40, but it's getting there. one step on the ladder, right? One step on the ladder. But yeah, no. So we've been we started in November 2018. Actually, is when Australis was first born. It was really like a brainchild of my experience in the industry. I've been working in the industry professionally since late 2015, early 2016. And in terms of my knowledge of crypto, where I've actually learned about crypto, I first heard of Bitcoin way back in 2011 when I was actually at school. But I didn't really pay any attention, so to speak, to what Bitcoin was or any sort of the fundamentals or any of the philanthropy around Bitcoin. But it was more so that I heard that there was an anonymous currency that people were online using. At the time, it was predominantly on forums, by the way. There wasn't, the darknet markets were not as big at this point. I think it must have been around 2011. So it wasn't, any time really before Bitcoin was anything. But my professional experience came actually more so out of just pure chance. I think I kind of got lucky in a sense, really, with my career really in this industry.
How so?
I was meant to go to university, so I left school in 2015, and I did really well actually at school. I was never really a applied student, so to speak. Sorry, but I did like school. I appreciate education. I appreciate academia, and I appreciate the time that people put in to learn. But I just had a big problem with the way education works. I've been massively into ancient history and ancient spirituality since I was about 10 years old. And the first time I really ever, considered that there is an alternative way of you learning was when I was about to join high school. And I kind of saw the education system for what it was, and I don't really mean that in a horrible way in any sense. I think there is some amazing benefits that come from academia. They just don't apply to me. I was never one of those kids who was top of the class. I was never the bottom of the class, but I had a ridiculous memory and I didn't have to revise. I was able to just kind of turn up in exams and do extremely well. Although I'm not proud of it, my attendance in the end of my A-levels was 33%. So I was there for a third of the time. And I left school beating near enough everyone in my class that was there the full time. There was actual modules that I learned by myself that I never got taught by a teacher, because I realized the education system is more so about teaching you to repeat information rather than you actually learn. My mum works in education, so I'm not against people who work in education by any sense. I just believe I believe in teaching kids what they need to be taught rather than trying to fit them in a box. I think the education system kind of takes people and it's oh, this is a fish, and it tries to turn you into a bear so that you can climb a tree. I think it works like a manufacturing warehouse sort of thing.
Yeah, that's how it started, though. I think there was. I remember Keith Richards from Rolling Stones, the guitarist.
Yeah,
he actually made these exact points some years ago, and he said, at the end of the day, schools, at least in England, I think they were born exactly for that purpose, because factory owners wanted to have better employees, so they started, opening up institutions to form employees, and those were the first form of schools. Then it became much more important and way more structured. And I see your point. I think it's actually a good point, that one curriculum does not necessarily apply to everyone. I can see the challenges of having a customized education, for everyone. I'm sure that technology can facilitate that. Um, and in a way,
It
I
can.
think it is transitioning a little. It is transitioning a little bit,
It is.
in the way people are able to select modules, um, and customize their learning experience if you want. Also, I
Yeah.
think there is less importance placed in the academia, particularly in the tech world, right? Like people are
Yeah.
more, from my experience,
It's more about
people are
skill.
more concerned exactly about your portfolio rather than
Yeah.
on the name of the
Yeah. Yeah.
university on your title, if you even have a title. So
Exactly.
I guess there is a positive shift in the direction that you were hoping.
Yeah, 100%. I think the education system is not necessarily needing of a revamp of necessarily custom
Hmm.
lessons for people, but I feel like and I have a very stoic view on the world, I guess, in a weird way, in this department. But society is all about quotas, and I was determined my whole life to never be a quota,
Yeah,
right? And and what I mean by that, and I don't mean that in a rude way, I don't mean that in a condescending way or a patronizing way in any sense of it, but there has to be construction workers, there has to be shopkeepers, there has to be road sweepers, and there has to be CEOs, right? There has to be. And it's which one are you going to be? Are you going to fit the quota or are you going to make the quotas? And that sort of mentality has been in me since a young age, although I never really appreciated it. And in fact, I probably didn't even appreciate it until last week when I had a conversation with somebody, which I don't want to say their name because there's discussions with bringing this individual into Australis, and I don't want to mess anything up for that individual right now. But they said something to me which was, I think, probably one of the most profound things I've heard ever, which is something which I guess was the piece I was looking for when thinking about education was I never fitted into the box at school, but I never ever thought of I would ever work for myself, if I'm honest. But I knew I never wanted to be a 9 to 5. I knew that was torture, right? I knew the 9 to 5 was structured so that during the Industrial Revolution, the people who owned the factories could get more out of their workers while still respecting them slightly, right? And I think the structure of a day it had been predetermined by people of the past, which now doesn't really fit in the modern world we live in. And I think coronavirus is really showing that the
yeah.
ability of how productive we can be from home and remotely. But I think what this individual said was there is power in being a visionary. You don't need to be the executor to do everything. And sometimes the ability to just think ideas is good enough. And I think that really, although to some people that will mean nothing, to me, it made me feel like I actually had value because I've always been in the mindset that I could not really truly understand my place when doing certain things. I think Australis really was the first time in my life where I felt like my opinion to do with what I had to say was one respected, but people actually could resonate with it, right?
Mhm.
People, I have very outlandish views about a lot of different things which perhaps don't fit with a modern society. I have a big jumble up of all kinds of different political ideologies and religious ideologies which have shaped my perspective. And to have, like, with Australis, I think summarizing really my education point, I don't want to like kind of lose track of where I was going, was more of Australis kind of made me realize what my place was that I was so searching for when I was in the education system and that I didn't find. I didn't find it. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor and I knew I wasn't going to be a teacher. I knew I was never going to be a mechanic and I knew I was never really going to be, a philosopher or anything like this. But when I was at school, I studied those things. I studied philosophy, I studied law, I studied politics, I studied history. And now I kind of see where that has shaped me more so now that I've applied those skills to something
Yeah.
like Australis than before. And one of the things that personally, like I do feel a sense of responsibility for, not right now, by no means have, you quote unquote made it. But I do feel like once Australis is at a level where, people take notice of it, as so to speak, I do want to give a lot back to young people who were in a similar mindset to myself. I was about to go to university, and the day I was due to go, I said to my mom, I was like, you know what, this just isn't for me. It just isn't. I was like, am I going to go and sit and for 3, potentially 4 years, and listen to some guy who in all honesty is not really got much to teach me, because at the end of the day he's still sat there himself. And I realized that lessons in life often don't come from the people that work in the education system. And some of the best lessons I've been taught about people who don't even have a formal education,
Yeah.
never been to school, like proper school anyway, and never university, no sort of master's degree or anything like that. But they've taught me the most, and I quickly realized that if I was going to do anything in this world, it was down to me. It wasn't down to the A I got in politics. It wasn't down to the A star I got in history. It wasn't down to that. It was down to Adam and who he is as an individual, and how he can use his skills to really kind of excel himself. And that, I guess, really is where my journey actually began. Was quite late, actually. I didn't really, I never really had a massive ambition as a child to go on and do something specific, but I always knew I was going to be a millionaire. I always knew. And I remember in year 8, I was 13. I had a teacher. I'll say her name on here. Her name's Miss Ward. And we were asked, what were you going to be when you're older? 12, 13-year-old, you got girls, they're going to be singers or actresses or models, and you got boys, they're going to be football players or rugby players or MMA fighters, all this crazy stuff, right? And I was like, well, I'm shit at football. I'm rubbish at most sport.
I feel you on that.
I'm 5'7", so I'm not going to make it to the NBA, right? And I was like, I better do something with my brain, right? I was never going to be a model, so I was like, do you know what? I got to start doing something with my brain. So I realized, kind of in a sense, that at a young age, that you didn't really need to know specifically what you wanted to do.
I want to stop here. I want to ask you. Sorry if I stop, because I want to expand, because you've said a lot of interesting things, and I wanted to touch upon some of these. So first, I wanted to, it's more than a question, it's just my point of view. And I think, when you said about ideas and execution, now we're living in the day of execution. Like from Gary Vee to everyone else, everyone is just treasuring executions and not idea. And, I've always been a very idea person, so to say.
Yeah.
And I always thought that it was so great. And to an extent, I still do think that. But one thing that I have to say I've learned is that I do have to admit execution is fundamental, and the problem is everyone has idea, but if you're not capable of executing it or of assembling a team that executes it for you, then it's just an idea.
Exactly.
And I'm specializing in intellectual property law, and that's the very core. Intellectual property does not protect the idea, because idea in itself is just air. It doesn't have value. It's the implementation of the idea. That's the expression. And I think although I can clearly see that you have confidence in your abilities, I do think that maybe you're not crediting yourself enough, because like if someone was to hear back what you said, it would appear that, okay, you're just the idea. But that's not true, because even assembling a team around it and committing to it, taking decisions in pursuance of those ideas is a form of execution. So I would say that, I just wanted to make that point. Now, on the second side, when you said that you were 13 and the teacher asked you what you were going to do, one thing that I'm interested in, to know, you acknowledge that, you were self-aware in a way with respect to the football, for example. Were you sad? Is it something that saddened you? Like, understanding maybe that, okay, I can't be a footballer because I suck at football, or because I'm bad at football, or
Do you know? I think maybe when I was younger, like I looked around maybe at other people and was like, I wish I could, play football like them. But as arrogant as this might sound, I just always knew it never mattered. I always knew, like when she said, what are you going to be? And I said, I'm going to be a millionaire. And they laughed at me. Every single person in the class laughed. And like, I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, it's funny, man. But, we'll see. Like, we'll see, right? Give it a few years. We'll see. Yeah. And I looked around definitely at other kids, and I thought, I wish I was, a football player. But I'll tell you one thing I didn't realize. I was a big believer in that football players and people in football in general were born with a gift to play football. I didn't realize it was hard work and training, right? That is how you get there. Yeah. Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo until the mindset of Cristiano Ronaldo developed.
Oh, I love that. Okay, let's delve into that. I love this. Go.
And interestingly, what you just said there is exactly true, right? Is execution is actually what you're remembered for, not the idea. Ideas are, a penny in a pound. There's hundreds of them, right? But the executable ideas and how you go about executing your ideas is what separates you from the rest. And through my experience with Australis specifically being kind of my first major thing that I've ever really done by myself, I definitely underestimated the workload, but I also appreciated it way more than I've ever appreciated anything else I've worked on, because watching it come to life and also looking back on who I was when I started and who I am now and the knowledge I have and the abilities that I've kind of expanded on and developed, I think is more than I could have ever learned at school,
Yeah,
more than I could have ever learned at university. And I quickly realized that one of my greatest assets is just being me. I've not got a formal education. I haven't been to university. I'm self-taught in near enough everything that I have done. I've taught myself, the school of YouTube and Google, so to speak,
of
right?
course. No, but that's
And
actually becoming, in my opinion, a form of university. And it's funny because shows like the Joe Rogan Experience and those type of things, you can
yeah,
tell who follows them by what they speak about. Like it's
yeah,
funny. You could go out for a beer and. I mean, not now, but before this
yeah, I
and
wish.
after this, you'll be able to go. But you just meet friends and you start talking. Maybe someone throws in the diet or someone throws in the
Yeah,
exercise or sport team, and based on what they say, if they educate themselves periodically, like on an ongoing basis through YouTube.
yeah,
I think it's just at the end of the day, it works as an algorithm. The most
yeah,
popular content is the one that reaches more people. So probably likelihood is, if I saw a video and I'm on YouTube 24/7 and you're on 24/7 on YouTube,
yeah.
if unless our tastes are completely
Different,
opposite,
yeah,
then we'll probably come across the same form of content. So I think you see
exactly.
that. But sorry to budge in again, but
No
you're
worries.
touching on points and then you're moving on, and I'd like to
Yeah, I do
hold
this all
that
the
a
time,
little
by the
bit
way.
and explore them a bit more, because you say in your experience with Australis, when you started, this experience gave you a lot. So I'd like to hear exactly, how did Australis start? So what was behind it? First of all, you said that you discovered Bitcoin on forums, right? And or you
Yeah,
started learning about it. So how did you go from that point, right? Like, if you can share the story and if you're willing to. So what is
yeah,
exactly
sure.
your story in terms of specifics, from you discovering Bitcoin to you setting up Australis? And where are you now? Who is in your team? What are the type of lessons that you've learned
Yeah.
along the way?
Yeah, I mean, back in 2000, it would have been about 2011. I was probably, year 8, year 9, something like that. Would have been around the time I would have first heard about Bitcoin. There was a guy at my school. I wonder if he remembers this. His name was Alfie, and it was in my French class actually. And he told me actually about it. He was like, "Oh, look, we used to be allowed to go on computers in French, right?" And like he showed me on there. He was like, "Look, there's this thing called Bitcoin. People use." And the forum that he was actually showing me was 4chan, which has been around for a long time. But it was actually a post linking to Bitcoin. It wasn't the original Bitcoin talk forums or anything like that. I certainly wasn't kind of aware enough around finance or anything to really appreciate Bitcoin. And to be honest with you, I kind of looked at it for 15, 20 minutes and it was like a fascinating idea. It was like a cool idea. And then it just got forgotten. I was a big gamer at the time, right? So I was predominantly console, but then I did do some PC gaming as well. And
What
it
were you
was more of
playing?
like, so console, I used to be a massive Call of Duty nut, right? Call of
Okay.
Duty. And I used to actually compete on like game battles and kind of the early days of
That was the
MLG.
beginning of Face Clan. No, they were used to do the tricks and all of that, or no? Were
Yeah.
you following them on YouTube, or?
So Phase first came about when they were doing the trick shots, I guess Modern Warfare 2,
Two,
and
as
then
exactly, yeah.
people started to kind of remake content from COD 4, and it was COD 4 was the first kind of online Call of Duty I was introduced to, and I just played it like excessively, and that kind of just got my love for gaming, I guess. But I was good actually. I was very good, not necessarily at trick shots, but more competitive Call of Duty, right?
Yeah,
Um, and we competed on game battles, which was like a social media for gamers, and was the amateur version of MLG, which became
of
later on as
course.
like the competitive
Yeah,
gaming
yeah,
that we
yeah.
know now. And so we would compete in that, and we actually was in the top tier for game battles. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Team TAC. It was like a 4v4 game on Call of Duty with
No,
multiple different game
to be fair,
modes.
I wasn't a Call
That's
of Duty player. I used to play StarCraft 2 a
yeah,
lot, competitively.
Starcraft was great. And to be fair, I played Starcraft on PC. I was a big World of Warcraft nut as well on PC.
Man, tell
Yeah.
me, it took 10 years of my life
Oh
from
mate,
Burning Crusades onward. So you
like
used to play
I
well.
yeah,
Man, I
I
love
look
that.
back on that. And I just
Every,
think, Jesus Christ, I would come home from school and it would be maybe 3:15. Our school would finish at 2:50. I'd be home at 3:15, and I would play that till 2 in the morning.
same,
Like,
same.
and I
But
would
when was that? Because you
forget the
must have
day.
been played Pandaria, no? Or Cataclysm. What was it?
Yeah, yeah, I did. The last one I started, the last one I ended playing was, I can't remember what it's called now, but it had a big dragon on the front case. So it was like
Cataclysm. Yeah,
Cataclysm.
it
That
was
was the last
Deathwing.
kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, that was the last. That was like the last kind of update of the game, I guess, that I played, or release of the game that I played. Before I can't. Well, that was, I guess, I must have been 14 at that point. I think
yeah,
14, and that was like
probably.
the last one I played. I never kept on following after that because FIFA became popular, and I started playing FIFA games on Xbox and things. But weirdly enough, the WoW community that I was kind of involved with, and a lot of my friends that played, World of Warcraft as well at the time, we weren't really too into the wider internet. Whereas what you kind of tend to find with PC gamers is they explore the whole internet.
Yes, they solved their problem going to forum, the computer issues. Yeah, I
Exactly.
used to do that, all of that. Like you just a
Yeah.
sponge. You're a sponge. You
You're a
absorb
sponge. Yeah.
information. Yeah, all the time.
And I take, like, my girlfriend's brother. He's a bit of a computer whiz as well. And he's a PC gamer and played a lot of PC games. And I remember watching him towards, I was, he's only about 16, 17 now. But a few years back, like, the amount of knowledge he would get just by having to go on a forum to find the answers to certain
Yeah.
questions that he has. He had a fantastic computer knowledge. And if I'm really honest, tech knowledge to me came late. Like, only really since, 18, 19 onwards, really did I start to even really pique an interest in it. I never was one of those people. I wasn't building computers from a super young age or anything like this. So it was never a natural thing to me.
So how did you become
Something
involved
clicked.
in Bitcoin? Like, so from what I understand, the first time you heard about Bitcoin, right? It was through Alfie, this friend of yours from the French class.
Yeah. He now lives in Dubai selling real estate. I think
Ah,
he's actually
damn,
turned
he's
out all
doing
right
well
as
for
well.
himself.
Yeah. We don't speak anymore. He's like,
You should
but
reach him
yeah, I
out
mean,
after this episode, man. You should send
I
him.
need to say thank you to him, don't I?
Uh,
Yeah.
and so, but from what I understand, you learned about Bitcoin. Okay, interesting fact. Close the
Yeah.
door. You were
Yeah.
not. You played games, but you were not a computer geek. So also the technological
No.
side of it probably didn't excite you much. So
No.
why are you here? Like, how are you here? What happened?
So okay, so I started working at Bitstocks,
Ah,
which
damn.
were
Okay.
the first market advisory firm in London, and they're still going now. They've released
Yeah.
a new project, really cool, and yeah. Where he did To answer your question, we're going to open a few rabbit holes, right? Which I know I do, like, all the time. I love talking. I can't help it.
I love talking too. So go ahead. It's gonna be the longest
um,
episode of Blockchain Rock with the youngest guest we've had.
so I was given an opportunity by Michael Hudson of Bitstocks,
Okay.
and I'm totally thankful for it.
How did you meet him?
I found a job ad, right? I was working in sales. I decided not to go to university. I didn't do nothing for 3 months. And then what the money I did have saved up from working through school, I ran out and I had to go get a job. And I worked in a sales office in Kingston, my local hometown. And after that, I was like to my girlfriend, I was like, I don't know, should I just go back to uni? I don't really know what I want to do. And she was like, no, look, just keep looking. Something will come up. And one day I saw an advertising for this Bitcoin company advertising. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll go for this job interview. And I went for the job interview, and it was Michael who was there. And we met. And we bonded over our love of spirituality, but also ancient history. And the truer side to the societal system we live in, which is totally orchestrated and administered by a very small select of secret individuals. And I've known this my whole life. I come from a family of a line of Freemasons, and I've never been tempted to really join it, but I've always been curious by what's going on at these meetings. And I never really took that step till I was about, 10, 11 years old, where I could really understand what this stuff was saying. And I started to realize that there was a massive chapter of human history that had been forgotten. And the economic system that we live in today has been totally orchestrated and administered to make you forget a lot of this history.
What is the
And
chunk? Is it medieval? Which part are you referring to? The dark years
I'm
of medieval or before
anywhere
that?
from between 15,000 BC
Mhm.
to around 580 AD is kind of like the area in which most of my study has happened. In terms of, I've studied history for literally my whole life. I did it GCSE A level, done it very well actually. A modern history and stuff like that was never really interesting. I just didn't
Yeah.
really like it until I started to realize how the foundations that were laid literally 10,000 years before are still impacting us today. And
But what about the Roman Empire? Because like you started speaking of a period where the Roman Empire also was born, and like, do you think
yeah,
that's
so
manipulated history?
I think when I said there's a missing chapter in human history, I think, if we look at the Younger Dryas period and a period in history which we don't really know much about, basically before the last ice age, there
Mm.
is huge amounts of monoliths, megaliths all over the world, which are certainly. I'm trying to find the right word without trying to delve into conspiracy theories, but
We're
that are
very
definitely older.
borderline here. Like,
Yeah, yeah, very, very much older than what we were told. And when on my job interview, we discussed this totally openly. And I didn't really know too much about Bitcoin, but something stuck with me, and it was finite supply,
Mhm.
born out of the financial crisis, and thirdly, it was the fact that Bitcoin was decentralized. It
Yeah.
was the fact that individuals were returned sovereignty of their wealth. That's what resonated with me, because 10 years of research, and all of a sudden I found my answer. I
But
was
see,
like,
you're
I
talking
found.
about concepts which are sorry if I interrupt you again. I love this
Yeah.
being like this back and forth conversation. Uh, you mentioned, you know, principles which are those that are discussed by economists or people that have an interest
Hmm.
in finance or the markets. And from what I understand, you didn't at the time. So
No,
how
I did.
come?
I
Was it
really
something
didn't.
innate, or was it something that just was Michael so good in explaining you this principle that they resonated with
Mm.
you immediately without having to have any background knowledge? How did it happen? Why did you feel drawn to
It,
that
it, wa-
concept?
so it was my challenge before my interview was to look into Bitcoin and learn about Bitcoin,
Okay.
and really study what it was. And I'm a sponge for information when I'm interested in something. And when I went for the interview, I never had a wide knowledge of the fundamentals of Bitcoin, but what it was the missing piece for, I knew straight away. I knew. I was like, this is what we've been waiting for to actually bring about real change in this world.
Yeah.
Society and the financial system has been built by a group of individuals that want to favor it for themselves. We talk about the developing world all the time when we talk about cryptocurrencies, and we talk about, the developing world is going to, have this is going to be the greatest distribution of wealth ever. But what we are forgetting is they are there because of the financial system that we are all a part of. The financial system is designed to purposefully exclude individuals from it. It is a non-competing system. You can pretend that you compete, but you never compete. The game is designed to lose. By having a fractional reserve system, you are ultimately restricting the life cycle of your currency, and currency is not money. And I knew
Yeah.
that from a very, very young
It's
age,
an
and it was
instrument of that.
exactly. And I asked this question, right? If you removed all the money from the world, right, and we just start with the three pillars of money, right, that we have a central bank, we have a government, and we have a population, right?
Mhm.
If all money is debt, and all money is created from debt, and there is an interest rate attached to the production of new money, and you remove all that, and the population says, I want benefits and I want social care, right? Government, you're going to need to pay for it. How does the government pay for that? Well, the government sells government bonds to the central bank in exchange for new money. And the central bank said, no problem at all, Mr. Government. You can have your $100 billion, but you must pay me 1% interest every year. Well, if there's only $1 billion and you've got to pay 1% interest, where'd you get the 1% from?
Yeah.
It's
The
impossible.
people. Yeah.
You have to print, you have to print more.
Fair enough. Yeah, I see what you mean.
So you have to keep printing the money to keep paying the debt. And so who wins? The central bank. Well, the biggest misconception in life for amongst most people who are, in this world is the Bank of England is owned by the government, but it's not. The Bank of England is
Fair enough.
not really
I see your
connected.
point. But isn't So, okay, maybe this is going to be a bad parallel, okay? But electric current, right? You
Hmm.
remove a proton in order to
Yep.
trigger the chain of event.
Yeah.
So isn't that 1% interest that chain of that trigger for the chain of event, so that then you have a cycle, an economy, you have movement. You see what I mean? Like movement doesn't come
There,
from
there is.
a space being completely sealed. It comes from, having a lack of space, or like a void that has to be filled
Mm.
continuously. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah. No.
creates
Totally. But the average life cycles of a fiat currency is very, very short,
Mhm.
right? It's very, very short. And you take the pound, for example, and we think the pound's one of the oldest standing currencies in the world, but it isn't. It got changed in 1971 on decimalization, which is why none of the former Commonwealth countries use pounds. They use dollars because the dollar was decimalized. It was divisible by 100. Before, we had shillings, farthings, crowns.
Yeah.
There were eights and sixteenths. It was almost impossible to run a world system on that. And
I
so the
love
petrodollar.
Sorry to interrupt you on this. I love this
No
point,
worries.
and I wouldn't want to miss, to go ahead and then having to come back to it,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
that's a question that I asked already, some previous guests, and
yeah.
the question is exactly what you said now. It's impossible to trade when you have all of these fractions. So that's to
Hmm.
me, and bear in mind, I believe in Bitcoin. I buy Bitcoins
Yeah,
and I hodl
yeah,
them,
yeah,
as
yeah.
they say. But here is my question. I really see a struggle in becoming a unit of account, which, according to
100%.
economist principles, is one of the fundamental aspect of of a true currency.
Yeah,
So that's my issue. Like, I love the fact that it has, it's capped, and that of course should supposedly beat inflation.
yep,
The value should raise up as there is more adoption, but
yep,
I think it's so hard to trade in Bitcoin, and I think that being
definitely.
able to converse using that denomination is very important for the success of Bitcoin. And when I spoke with Yoni Asia, the CEO of eToro, a couple of
Yeah,
episodes ago, you know, he made the point, and fair enough, that it's a sound point. He said, but at the end of the day, if I'm Japanese and I trade in yen, I won't come to you and expect you to trade to converse with me in yen. I will use the dollar, right?
yeah,
Which in a way then I say, but then that defeats the purpose of the,
yeah,
like, that's why the dollar is stronger, because it is the currency of reference to so many
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah,
And there are speculation over why the dollar, and a lot of people tied to the oil in the Middle East, and in all of the treaties that they signed. And but we're living in the data,
yeah.
in the economy of data right now. So whichever
That's right.
currency will become the reference for data trade, that will be the dominant currency in the years to come. And I hope Bitcoin will be that currency, but I struggle to believe that will be the case, because it's going to be so hard to trade with fractions of Bitcoin, especially due to its volatility, which
We're
hopefully
gonna
that.
help you.
Go on, go on, go
We're gonna
on.
help
Sorry,
you.
Adam,
We're
that
gonna
was
help
super,
you.
super long. But do you see my
No, no,
struggles?
no,
And
no, no. But you said something super important there, right? Right now, Bitcoin as a currency, I'll say it on camera, it does not work, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have BSV and BCH,
Yeah,
right? If there's not just the fact that Bitcoin is 8 decimal places and a mind-numbing task of trying to account for Bitcoin, it also doesn't work as a currency, really. You can't transact in it the same way we can with fiat right now. Now, do I think BSV is a cool project? Yeah, I think BSV is a cool project. Do I think BCH is a cool project? Yeah, it's a cool project. They're being held back by the people running them. The principles and the fundamentals are sound, right? But we should be more concerned of fixing them on Bitcoin than we should be splitting the chain and going down that route. I'm one of those people who it costs what right now like $8,500,
yeah,
$8,800 or something to buy a Bitcoin, right? It costs like 200 to buy a BSV, right? If you spend 8.5 grand on Bitcoin and you haven't hedged yourself on a $200 investment, I think it's pretty naive, right? We're in a very, very like open industry where change can come at any moment, man. Like the mines could go out in China and the industry is in tatters, right? There is a very loose example. I'm not that silly about crypto, but you know what I mean.
of course.
But I think one of the things you said there, which is crucial, is people right now just aren't going to use it. How do you expect ordinary folk to use it? And what Australis's goal is to let you use crypto without ever knowing you're doing it. It's to replicate the existing financial system using cryptocurrency as its principles to underpin the integrity, I guess, of the system. The integrity of the system is there is that, okay, whilst they are allowing me to facilitate trade, or they are allowing me to spend my crypto or even invest in crypto, so to speak, at the same time, my experience is not much too dissimilar now to my bank. When I call up and I want to invest in stocks and shares, or I go on my stocks and shares ISA and I can see exactly what's there. The difference is with the industry of crypto right now is people say they're trying to simplify the industry, but they're actually just overcomplicating it, because all we're trying to get you to do right now is use Bitcoin. But the factor that we're all missing is society is never going to use Bitcoin as we use Bitcoin today. When money was first invented, we used to barter chickens for sheep. And now I can walk around with a ring on and tap it and pay, right? Money changes. And what people are forgetting is the digital economy that we live in now. And you mentioned an economy of data, is Bitcoin isn't just a currency. Bitcoin is an infrastructure platform. The currency is what we have decided to use it for, not what Bitcoin was intended for. Bitcoin, as a white paper says, a peer-to-peer electronic cash, right? And if you are a maximalist, a Bitcoin fundamentalist, then sure, you're gonna adhere to those policies. But the idea of Bitcoin is that the currency element facilitates on Bitcoin, but also so does everything else. And when you're using Bitcoin as the infrastructure layer, or you're using decentralized principles, you can replicate much of the existing economy. And I think, there's a couple of companies I can name off the top of my head right now, which I think do it very well. You've got you have the debit card companies that let you spend. Companies like Tap, right? Zappo was
Yeah.
another one back in the day. I mean, they're still about. They just got their DOT license as well, which is great. So there is ways of spending your crypto, but then you still go on and it's, I've got 1.167899921 Bitcoin. And how is a 75-year-old lady who's, is used to
how is
counting
how
physical
is the
cash?
20 or 30 years old person?
Yeah,
Don't
yeah. I
fool
mean,
yourself. Why?
yeah.
Would you trade like that? Like, mate, I
Probably
love
not.
that scarf. It's like 0.001.
Right. So, yes. And ironically, right now, nobody's buying Bitcoin because they want more Bitcoin. They're buying Bitcoin so they can sell it and buy a car. They're buying Bitcoin and buy a house, right? They want to sell
Yeah,
for fiat money. And this kind of creates the idea of a stable coin. And why were stable coins invented in the
of
first place?
course. Yeah,
Well,
I see what you
we
mean.
need a cryptographic way of using existing money. So why don't we attach our fiat currency to this? We can make it better.
But then that's the
Because
problem, no? Because it's centralizing it in most cases, not everywhere. I know that
yeah,
Libra wants to be a distributed, like in Switzerland, foundation and all of
yeah,
that, but it still becomes centralized. Now, the moment you attach,
exactly.
the moment there is someone to collect at the end of it, there is someone who controls the chain, and that's what I don't buy
Yeah,
in. And I've been speaking with a lot of people, which I've been vocal about the great benefits of it, which I think are real.
yeah,
But there is always someone behind it, like,
100%.
and there is always that back door.
But we have the ability to change that through technology, right? We actually
Okay.
do. And I think I don't want to go too much into what specifically we're doing so no one copies us. But
Don't worry. If
um,
it's dangerous, let's leave this and go back to how you became involved with Australia.
but I will give a hint, right? It's when we send emails, we need to log into our email address, right? And that or our mail account and send an email address out. But to receive mail, we only need our email address, right? Which is the same as a public key and a private key when it comes to cryptocurrency. The idea of centralization and decentralization is a matter of private keys rather than public keys, and you can, by technology, enable yourself as an organization or a custodian of a person's funds, which ultimately is a central entity with numerous attack vectors, including human ones,
Yeah,
which
particularly human
effectively
ones.
yeah, particularly human ones. I think you become a gateway, to a client's money or an individual's money, right? But what if that individual now had a choice? Do I want to keep my money there? But all of a sudden, I now have more control over my wealth with that company. Maybe that company is where I check my balance, but the ownership of the funds is mine. And this hybrid model is something which we've worked on, and it's something we've actually done, and we believe is going to be. I wouldn't say the problem is solved, but one step towards solving that problem.
But so in
Go
this
on.
equation, from what I understand, you would still need traditional fiat currency as a reference, correct? For
You
people being able to to
So
refer to
right now,
value.
yeah. So right now, stable coins, right? You take a stable coin as an example. Not that that is what we're doing, but a stable coin is a perfect example. You still need fiat currency.
Exactly, because it attaches to it. It's not independent. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. But when we look around at the wider society and kind of the movement we're making is cash is going to disappear before we know it, right? We take
Sure.
the United Kingdom, for example, right? Barclays closed down most of their rural stores. And there was no solution for the people who lived in the rural parts of Britain to access their cash. And so what actually happened was big petitions and, quite a lot of noise was made by some of the members of parliament representing these individuals. And the post office stepped in to be the place where you can check your balance and you can withdraw cash in these rural areas. But the war on cash is more evident than ever. And I asked this question in response, really, is not to you, but to kind of society as a whole. If you're just spending money on a card, you're already using Bitcoin in a weird way.
I
You're not
agree.
using Bitcoin itself, but you're using a digital currency, right?
Yeah.
Except you have no control over it. And I don't want to go back to the conspiracy stuff,
No,
but
no.
it does link back there. Is if you disagree with your government and everything you do from your passport to your money is electronic and it's controlled by a central entity, it's very easy to turn you off,
Exactly, and
right?
that's what it
And
comes down to: freedom. That's what
freedom.
every guest that we've had, and with which we've tackled, this question from Oni
Mhm.
Avin to John Matonis to everyone.
Legend.
Like one of
Yeah.
the pillars of freedom is economical freedom, and you don't have economical freedom if every single transaction you have is being monitored, which
Yeah.
brings back a discussion that I had with a friend here in Gibraltar, which he said, I think that Bitcoin is going to succeed because it's going to become the cash of the future. Because when cryptocurrencies become when some form of cryptocurrency is implemented at a government level, and so where fiat money
Yeah.
will become cryptographic and will use blockchain, although I believe, of course, it's going to be in a centralized manner.
Mm.
Then if you want to keep a transaction private, you will probably use Bitcoin, and that in a way is
Yeah.
in itself like also another promise for this currency, or call it however you
But
want.
we say that, right? And
Mm.
ironically, Bitcoin is a globalist stream, right? It is. It's almost of a sudden the world can be united, but I can see everything you're doing. And if I don't like it and you dare to step against me, I can revoke access now to you. If you can't use these businesses because I got chain analysis and I can see where your coins have
Yeah,
been. And so you're no longer a
and
free
that's Joe
individual. You
Matonis,
have to do
another
what I
point that he
say,
raised. It's
right?
the
And
crypto arms race. He says that there
yeah,
are
and it
now
is a
privacy
crypto arms
wallet.
race.
Yeah,
It is.
that's
It is.
great.
And I think like where and this I mean nicely in a very weird way loops back to the thing is where did my kind of interest in the industry come, and it was economic freedom. And why does that link to ancient history? And you asked me about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire famously produced fake coins and crashed their economy, right? And that's exactly what we do now. The Roman Empire never died off, it just moved location, and that's all it did.
Yeah, it was
And
forgotten and then it came back.
yeah, it was forgotten by the people that needed to forget. But the people that remembered are the same people that still orchestrate the stuff today that we all know, right? Famously, I'm not going to go into kind of the surface level like conspiracy theories and blame the Rothschilds or anything like this, right? It goes far beyond that. And it probably goes into a point where I probably will be ushered out of Gibraltar before I even am allowed in. But put it this way, the monetary system is by no means an accident. And the monetary system has been designed for thousands of years. And the exact form of control, of monetary control, of economical control, the idea that the poor get poorer and the rich get richer has been ingrained in society, in our DNA since we were first conceived. And I think as human life has changed and we look back at, I ask this question often, right? Is when people say, ancient history, how does that link to Bitcoin? Well, do you know how the pyramids were built? And most people don't know, right? Or they're going to say, yeah, they used slaves and they dragged them with big rocks and big ropes and stuff. That's how they did it. It's like, okay, yeah, we have no idea about
Yeah.
how the pyramids were built. We have no idea how Bitcoin came about either, but we know it's here, right? And when you look at the pyramids specifically, the water damage on the pyramids is so bad. They have immense water damage all the way up almost to the top point of the pyramid.
Mhm.
Now, the only time it rained in that part of Egypt was before the last ice age, or 12,400 years ago, in the last age of mankind, so to speak, the age of Pisces. And I think that ultimately, the chapter of human history that we have forgotten has been forgotten on purpose. And we remember, you must remember this, especially. Well, I'm not sure if
I
you would have
wasn't
had
there
it.
at the time. It was 5,000
Not
years
not
ago,
not
allegedly.
pyramids, but
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
you must remember back in the day of like when you was at school, there was no computers, so the information we used to have Britannica, right, which was like an
Yeah,
encyclopedia.
yeah,
You can look at that; most of that stuff's been disproven now, right? So much
yeah.
stuff in there has now been disproven, and I think one of the things that we are struggling with the concept of Bitcoin is because we are so unpragmatic, if that's a word even, with whilst
I
we're
see.
not realizing that we are.
I see
And
what you say, but I see. Sorry to barge in. I see what you
no,
say,
no
but I
worries.
also see the look. History is. I don't know how to phrase it. I want to be precise with what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
history is imperfect, okay, and
Mm-hmm.
there is no such thing as a perfect story because there are
Nope.
there are point of views, and everything is interpreted through the lenses of each of those that was there or
Yeah.
lived that, right? So for example, you can see that from an argument between friends. You speak with the two friends, they have an argument, the argument was one and the views are two.
Yeah.
And the point of views
Yeah.
are two, and they will account different facts. History
Yeah.
is a bit like that, and it's notoriously known that victory is written by those that win war and so on and so forth. But
And
despite that,
history is a man's perspective,
it's a
basically.
man's artifact. Yeah, exactly. It's not a law of physics. It's a
No.
story. You can draw your conclusion from it or not. It affects the future to an extent, unfortunately, because
Yeah.
it carries a lot of hatred, and but so I see what you mean about, but the problem is there is so much information now with during this information age, and it's clearly a problem with all of the misinformation, and some are really obvious. I mean, some are clearly targeted for people that are not practical, like that
Yeah.
that have not grown during this age, like at
Yeah.
maybe 60 or 70 even,
Yeah.
because it's so obvious. Like when you see a website called the blindpirate.wood,
Yeah.
I'm not that keen on like believing every word that is in there. So, but I think
I'll
it's a
tell,
difficult. I think it's a challenge. Who do you
I'll tell you
believe?
where exactly. I'll tell you where I was going with this. Right, is
Yeah,
factor that in. Right, there is water damage, and there's water damage on the Sphinx as well. We know the head of the Sphinx was carved after the original thing. And do you know about the ancient mathematics that are coded into the pyramids?
yeah. They're all built like basically they're all follow a pattern, correct?
They
They,
line up
they line up
exactly to a
exactly, but not.
33rd to a degree of Orion's belt.
Yeah, and also I think with the one in South America, if I'm not mistaken,
If
right?
you take, yeah, I think you're talking about Teotihuacan, which is a ancient megalithic site in Mexico,
Yeah,
I believe,
and it
and
aligns with the pyramids in Egypt,
and
correct,
it
or
does
something?
indeed,
Yeah.
it does. But if we take specifically the pyramids of Egypt, and you take the height of the pyramids, you have the exact distance of the Earth. Right, you have the time that I believe by 144. You need to fact check me before you put this live, but there is the mathematics of the pyramids are the circumference of the Earth. Right.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard the saying maths was a discovery, not an invention?
No, yes, but I'm trying to understand how it applies to what we were
To
talking
Bitcoin.
about.
So this is why. There's 144 blocks a day in Bitcoin. That adds up to 9, right? There is a 21 million limit on Bitcoin. 2 and 1 adds up to 3. 3 and 9 are both very linked numbers.
Mhm.
And the exact mathematical code that is in Bitcoin is present in the pyramids. And the ancient, I guess, Turing or almost Turing complete mathematics that make up Bitcoin are ancient mathematical, I guess, sequences of numbers, which, when used together, ultimately make a system extremely secure. And we have to argue Adam Back, he invented Hashcash back in the early 90s, and he's now the CEO of Blockstream. Where did he go wrong? One of the brightest minds. He wrote the algorithm for Zcash, but he couldn't get it right himself. But somebody, a mysterious figure we've never seen, has produced a decentralized project that has expanded into a multi-billion dollar industry, which has never been hacked, never been broken, yet the mathematical principles that apply to Bitcoin
I
are
mean,
the exact same that
it's
apply to
been
the ancient.
hacked indirectly, not the actual. Yeah,
Indirectly, yeah.
indirect.
The
Yeah,
system itself, yeah, hasn't been broken. Although back in the early days, you could mess around a lot before the network was too big. But the
yeah. Fair
network
enough, because
itself,
you could influence all of those making up, the network, correct?
yeah. I mean, there was also like I can't remember specifically, but someone like printed a ton of coins as well, like fake coins, but they were rejected on the next block and stuff. Like back in the day, like you could change you could change certain things to do with the block before they were mined, right?
Okay.
When the blocks were getting propagated and the network wasn't too big, it was a lot easier to get enough computers to change the network.
Yeah,
But now it's just impossible, right? But the mathematical principles of Bitcoin stand, and I think like it's something that's massively overlooked. We often, as a wider industry, we tend to look underneath the hood when we take a look at things, and Bitcoin's not really been done like that. We've kind of just accepted it. It's like, okay, this thing was here and we're going to buy drugs online with it. But think of where we are now, right? Think of like where we are now, and think of how Bitcoin has had no marketing budget to do it, and it's just happened. And I'm a big believer at sometimes in life, things just happen. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin is some sort of spiritual calling or this is some sort of alien technology that's been created, but there is a lot more to Bitcoin than most people understand. And I think the secret of Bitcoin and the secret to Bitcoin's success, I think, could be argued to be found quite massively in its mathematical programming. I think
that's really
there
interesting.
is. I think, in fact, there are people that. I mean, I'll speak about a controversial figure, Craig Wright. Right,
Yeah.
he's hated by most people in the industry, but you can't argue with the guy's knowledge. Right, like I've met the guy and seen him speak on stage multiple times, and I'm not necessarily saying he definitely created Bitcoin, but I'm pretty convinced that he had
Well, you
something
wouldn't
to
be the
do with it.
first one that I had the opportunity to speak with, and which is very knowledgeable and operates in the industry, that
Yeah,
express such an idea if you were to do
yeah,
that. So I wanted to ask you, the reason. So basically, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that there is some
yeah.
form of relationship between the the mathematics behind the pyramids, right,
hmm
and the mathematics
And
of
most
Bitcoin.
the mathematics behind the pyramids and most ancient
Yeah, or
megalithic
like
sites which use geometry.
Okay,
Um,
and here you go. But this is then my question, right? So
mm,
it's more of a point of it's something that comes up to my mind. I see math as a science that was developed. It's an artifact that was developed
yeah,
by human in order to be able to interpret certain phenomena. Okay,
yeah.
like physics,
That's a great way of seeing
right?
it.
So I see them like that. I see as like a language that allows us i-
Yeah,
to interact or to better understand and be able to read and
yeah.
express certain things that are happening around us. So
hmm
if that's the case, then I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, that there exists some form of relationship between all things in the world. And I'm sure
Yeah.
that you could probably factor in also the number of cells that make up a human body, all of these things, because at the end of the day, it's a science that was developed to understand relationships. So I'm not
Well,
surprised whether,
you
yeah,
just touched on Fibonacci
yeah, Fibonacci
without even
sequence.
realizing it. I mean, Fibonacci dominates every cell of
Yeah,
human life we have,
from
even to
logo
the way your
making
face
to
develops.
seriously, they're
Yeah,
using it to make logos, the spiral. But so I'm not very, I have to say, I'm not surprised about that, and I don't think there is
yeah,
any more meaning to that than
yeah,
simply saying, well, I think everything is carries a relationship. Anything that
yeah,
exists carry a relationship, and to me, again, coming from maybe an intellectual perspective, what I
yeah.
believe Bitcoin will go down in history as, and more the blockchain, I would say, than Bitcoin and its iteration with Bitcoin, with the Bitcoin protocol, is that
hmm
I think what it enables to do for the first time in history is to make something that is virtual real. And to
hmm
me, that is just mind blowing because
Yeah.
copy and
It's
paste
interesting
has
you say
been,
that.
to me, copy and paste has been the enemy of information technology when it comes to property for ages,
Yeah,
right? As you, I'm a very keen gamer, and it's something that always annoyed me is not
yeah,
owning the actual item. I'm putting in so many resources in terms of time, money, into
yeah,
games, and then actually all I have is valueless because it depends solely by the publisher desire and wishes with that game. And
Yeah.
it would be cool if you look at Ready Player One, where they carry items from different game in different environment. But now I digress.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to say is that I virtual property is a very complex subject which has not been solved from a legal standpoint yet. Okay, yes, you can use
Yeah.
copyright for some forms, and you can use like confidentiality, so like
Yeah,
control
yeah,
it by
yeah.
way of contract, but those are imperfect form. That's a construct that you're
Mhm.
trying to build upon it to limit people and what they can do. But inherently, I can copy and paste the picture of your painting however many times I want.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you
I
can't do
mean,
that with Bitcoin.
you
Now
can't. No.
suddenly information has a narrative. Now suddenly information has history. Every bit
Hmm.
of information that exists on the blockchain has a story. It becomes real. It's almost
Yeah,
like,
I think,
yeah,
you
sorry.
know, I think like proof of work, I think is a
It's
beautiful
massive.
creation in itself. And I think like interesting, like that you said that, right, is you mentioned that it's something virtual is now real. And I think this is the first time where we can actually have true ownership across a digital platform, right? It is
Yeah.
really where you can own something for real online
And
and
it's
no one can
huge.
actually, and
That's
it's
huge.
huge.
That's huge.
Yeah,
Like,
mate,
think about the
hundred
implication of it
percent.
when it comes also to mixed reality, for example, where it's not only restricted to our screens, but you start also seeing it in the real world, and
Yeah,
the more augmented reality becomes sophisticated, the more it will be able to stimulate your senses, the less you will be able to discern what is real and what is not, which is scary,
no,
but it's also
that's correct.
exciting. So,
But do you not think then, and this kind of like this loops back massively because I think like one of the things, especially when we've like touched on like the pyramid stuff and things like this, is we would need hours for me to explain it and it to
yeah.
make total sense to you, right? But you just said something there which is pretty spectacular, and I think links it back massively. Why I am so interested in the link between Bitcoin and ancient cultures, and I think why that while there is some ludicrousy to that, I think there's some basis too. Is years ago we weren't so concerned about making some awesome technology to improve our life. We closed our eyes and shut our mouths, and we meditated. And the documentation we have written from numerous ancient cultures all across the world is we accept they invented the wheel. We accept they invented gunpowder. We accept they invented modern day tools. We accept they invented buildings, agriculture. They invented the division of labor. They invented government. But we don't like to credit them for the spiritual things that they've done. Somehow, this segment of the ancient cultures is just not good enough for us to listen to. And we can look everywhere, even in modern history, for that. We talk about JFK, right? And he's probably one of the most famous presidents other than Abraham Lincoln and probably Donald Trump and Barack Obama. You take them four, and you pretty much got the four most famous presidents other than George
Yeah,
Washington,
let's
right?
not forget Berlusconi in Italy. He's carry national pride. I'm kidding.
But we look at them and we take all of what they say, right? We take JFK and we take so much of what he said and we respect him. But there's a big piece of JFK that we just forget, right? It's the fact that he said that there was a deep state controlling him and what he had to do. You take Woodrow Wilson, and just this is way long ago. We're talking about before World War One with Woodrow
Yeah.
Wilson, and he's talking about an invisible power which, if you dare to speak of, people are actually terrified of doing it. You go back to Andrew Jackson, and you look at the slogan when he ran for president: Jackson and no bank. Why? They didn't want a British central bank. They didn't want the British to force their system upon the American people. This was a people of freedom. And in the original Constitution of the United States of America, it states, and we have it today, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms to fight against a tyrannical government, a government which forces you to adopt things in which it wants you to adopt, not what you need to adopt. And although I'm not anti-government as such, the federal government of the United States and you have state government in the United States is a very, very, very evident show of dictatorship through democracy. And I think society has the American political system has been dominated by personal characters forever. You know, you vote for a president, whereas here we vote for a political party. So when you vote for a president, there's direct accountability in that president and the message he stands for. But in the UK, we have a first past the post party system, and
Yeah.
people kind of don't feel as ingrained with their and intertwined with their political system as they do in America. It's very patriotic. People respect it. People here don't really care. You know, the voter turnout is only now increasing because of Brexit.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
what?
also Europe, though. I think that's also
Yeah,
part of that. Europe has so much history, so much more history, than the US. I
massive
think
amounts.
that people are way more cynical here
We
than in
built
the
Europe.
United States.
So we built Europe and we built America,
Yeah,
right?
but
Are the
people are cynical here. They've seen so much, they've heard so much, they've
Yep,
experienced so much. There is so much distrust in Europe, as
yeah,
opposed, I think, to America, where probably there is people are tend to be more idealistic.
yeah. I'm massive and nationalist for sure. I
Yeah,
think there's more nationalism and stuff there, but isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing that those people feel so aligned with this constitution, this Bill of Rights that they have, that they say, you know
yeah,
what, this is who we are. And why was that created? Because they had no representation, but they
yeah.
were taxated, right? So they had to pay tax. Now, in 1812, the British turned back up again and burnt down the White House. And why did they reinvade the United States? Well, it was because they didn't adopt a central bank, yet they were trading on the world stage. And we look throughout history at all of the great people that we look back at and think, wow, look, they did these great books and we all love them. Loads of those people say the same thing that we ignore, that there is there is an organization intertwined within society that is
Mm.
outlining everything we are doing. And although it is something I think that is difficult to accept and it's hard to really kind of get your mind around, when we vote,
But
we
I
don't
don't think that's the
actually.
case. I don't think
I
that's big. I don't think that's difficult to understand.
I think for maybe not for us, because we're in a generation where information is free, right?
But
We
I
can go
don't see it.
online and find the information
But
ourselves,
I
right?
don't see it like that. Like, I don't see it as
Mm,
a one body of those 10 people and their sons and the son of their sons dominating
yeah,
it. I could, and bear in mind, it's not a topic that I've explored, right? I'm just playing
yeah,
a bit the counterpart, so for the
yeah,
sake
yeah,
of having a
100%.
discussion. But I'm not particularly versed in these type of topics. So
Yeah.
I would argue then, that maybe that's a figure of speech, and it's referring simply to the fact that one man or one woman, one person
Mm,
is limited in what they can do, and that
yeah.
once you have power, really, even the United States president, it's only an abstract form of power, because you're accountable to so many people, and there are so many things
Hmm.
that you need to factor in.
Yeah.
You're not a king in the medieval that can just go there, decide, okay, everyone who stands on the left, kill them, like,
Yeah.
you can't do that stuff anymore. So
No,
I
no.
think, especially,
Or can you?
the more I hope not. Well, yeah, you can. It can become like that, and for example,
I mean,
recent
you just.
history,
I mean,
unfortunately,
you
is
just think about it, right? Even like we take kind of the figures that we hate in society now, or who
yeah,
we've been told to hate. And I'm not saying I like these people by any means, but Osama bin Laden was our friend before he was our enemy.
yeah, no, but that's political interest, economical interest. You might be a very
But
good
does
friend of someone in the fintech industry until they come up
and
with a
then you
product
hate
which is
him.
exactly like yours, or So yeah,
Yeah. And so this links right back to what I said right at the very beginning, right? And what we just had there was a prime example of how, although we live in a democracy, we live in a dictatorship. We make no choices. Then none of the choices are our
I
own.
don't think it's so
And
centralized.
you don't.
I don't. I think that there are a lot of interest, though, and that
Mm,
those interests, many of those are not known, of course, to the public.
yeah. Yeah.
And they do, of course, bear a massive effect in the
Let me put
decisions
it
that a
like this.
country takes. But I don't think there
Let,
is one person or like a small group of people that decide what's going to happen. I think there are, compared to the number of people that live in the world and which bear the effects
yeah.
of this decision, yes, it's a restricted amount of people that take decisions.
Yeah.
But I see these people being in conflict a lot of time, because one wants to gain and
Hmm.
want the other, which are
But if
in
we
their
talk about the
position to,
world, if we
yeah.
talk about the world, we always talk about the world as a society, but there's about 5 billion people in this world that are in poverty. There, most people in this world, the majority of this world are in poverty, right? We don't have a world. we have a Western world and we have parts of Asia which are nice, and we have Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
The rest of the world has been forced because of us to be in that situation because of the way we run the world, right? And the question I was going to ask you was, at the start I said I realized Bitcoin was the missing piece, right? It was that missing piece of the puzzle. And the reason why it was the missing piece of the puzzle is because all of a sudden, if they don't control our money, we control our money. We make the choices. Would we, after 9/11 happened, and I don't want to get too far into this, right?
Yeah.
We were told there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? And we needed to go and get those bad guys. And everyone's like, you know what? They attacked the West. We're going to go and attack them now, right? Because they're helping terrorists. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? And let's be honest, I'm not condoning terrorism in any sense, right? But war is only facilitatable by the fact that we can print the money to fight. If we replace the economic system with a system with a finite amount of capital, whereby the individuals have the sovereignty of their wealth, not a central bank, not a retail bank, you would now need to all vote by sending the money from your smartphone and chipping into the war fund, making you directly accountable for your actions of who dies in that war.
I see to an extent what I see, and I agree to an extent, but to another, I think wars have always been fought to transfer value from one country to another,
to another,
to win resources and all of that. But
yeah, but wouldn't we have and we mentioned proof of work, and I think weirdly enough, although this conversation we've had around this has been scattered, and that's just how my mind works, we can always bring it back to the point. And the answer to your question earlier on is like, why am I like, where do I come into Bitcoin? It's, with that missing piece, it's not just the war. And war causes poverty in the countries we fight in. It's never our countries we fight in, but it's their country that we fight in. Of course, we wouldn't fight in our beautiful city of London. But what happens is after that, we leave the mess behind. We do not fix it. And so you have billions of people purposefully excluded from a financial system just because a small minority of the world want to play a game. And if we adopt Bitcoin, no longer are we unfortunate to be born in Uganda or unfortunate to be born in rural parts of India, where in India there's 400 million people that are unaccounted for. Those people cannot travel. Those people cannot trade. They cannot even enter the digital economy because they can't get online. They don't have AML KYC documents. But why is that? And that is because we have built a financial system that purposefully excludes them, extracts value from the developing world. Britain took $45 trillion of wealth from India during its time of ownership. And that's we do this today, just not on a major scale. We no longer invade countries.
See, that's why I love
we just extract the money from them now instead.
I see.
And where I see Bitcoin, sorry, I don't mean to overstep you, but where I see Bitcoin as that missing piece is those individuals now no longer need to come to the UK, right? They actually can stay in their countries and compete, because for the first time in history, we're no longer judged on the place we are born, but for the quality of our work. And that is because we can have true ownership through Bitcoin.
I really like this part, and it's something that, banking the unbanked, and these promises, of course, are massive, and it's a fundamental promise that Bitcoin present and other, of course, blockchain and cryptocurrencies. But here is my question. You still need to buy Bitcoin in order to trade them. Where do you get the money for that? Because it's really, really expensive right now. So
I mean, let's not forget we can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin, right? We can buy like any sort of fractions of a Bitcoin. And trade. Now, I did say this back in 2016 around the first halving, where we went from 25 Bitcoins to 12.5 Bitcoins. I said, look, this is all great. Like the reduction is halved, but no one's using any at the moment. I think Bitcoin is like $200
to go up,
right? You need adoption to grow. But also you need to be able to earn money in Bitcoin for the economy of Bitcoin to really work.
Yes.
And these are a few of the sticking points that doesn't really kind of add up in the general sense. And I think these are the questions really that remain, in my opinion, somewhat unanswered by the wider community in crypto.
And another one, in my opinion, is that, and bear in mind, like there are minds which are way more clever than me, behind it. But
100%
one criticism
more
that
than
I
me
have,
as well.
But if everything is so included, then I think, from my perspective, the algorithm behind it fails to do one thing. It fails to allow me to mine with this. That would be true centralization. That would be true competition, right? Imagine if every wallet allowed you to
Mm-hmm.
mine, and you with your phone or me with my phone had the same exact chance of, writing
Mm-hmm.
the next block as any other person. So I think that the problem with Bitcoin is that now, in a way, it kind of starts to centralize again, because as the value go up, only few people have the capability to actually
Yeah,
mine the block. So yes, of course,
yeah,
at the
that's it.
beginning, great decentralization, but then it comes down to who can really mine, who can really
Who
compete.
can
And when you look at, for
exactly?
example, those quantum computing, for example, if that can
Mm-hmm.
introduce, well, how many people are going to be able to mine? 5 people, so
Yeah, and
that's one. And second is the
that
market cap. Because if you have a
yeah, yeah.
lot of capital, you can still manipulate Bitcoin as much as you want at
Hmm.
present,
It
in
doesn't
my
take.
opinion.
I mean, if you're a billionaire with a billion liquid, you
That's
can
it. Yeah,
manipulate.
you can
You
manipulate the
can
market.
manipulate Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think that is because there is. We talk about an economy of Bitcoin, and we talk about adoption, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Far from it. We are nowhere near where we need to be right now. But I do think, especially as kind of in terms of like the wider society that we live in, change is coming, and I think people are waking up. I mean, like I've touched on so many things, and I think we would need 10 hours for me to
Yeah, I think
explain
this
this
is
to make sense
dangerous.
to
Like, we can
people.
probably chat for the whole night here,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
with this back and forth.
But I do think like the reason why we haven't had adoption is the industry's fault. I think we have not we've spoke about adoption. We've discussed the developing world and banking the unbanked, but we've done nothing about going and helping them.
Yeah.
We've done nothing about simplifying crypto. We've just made it more
Well,
complicated.
but
We,
that's what's
we're,
exciting now. You see people
but that
like you, like Arsen, that
exactly,
are actually breaching the gap. They're creating products,
exactly.
they're creating services, they're creating the actual infrastructure that is needed for all of these promises to come true. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
love that.
what we're doing is building a neo bank. You can invest with us, you can save with us, you can get loans with us. There's so many things in the pipeline for us. What we want to do, and it's all with the user in mind. The products and the release
Yeah.
that we are doing
So
is, in my opinion, probably too much than what we should be doing. But at the end of the day, we live in the shade of the trees from the seeds planted by men that never got to sit in them. And I'm determined to be one of those men. And
yeah,
I and I think
sorry
unless
I
yeah, go
just
on,
want to say
sorry.
one thing, because I think it's amazing, and actually that's another point that Yoni was saying, is that you are approaching it, as well as, for example, ours and another example that I
Yeah,
gave, as a
yeah,
tech company. You're not approaching it as a company that operates in the financial market. So
exactly.
you're a user-centric company. Your mission statement
Exactly.
probably resonates a lot with that of Google, with that of Apple, with that of those companies. It doesn't probably resonate with, and I have nothing against banks, bear in mind, but it doesn't. That's not the type of spirit that challenger banks, but more generally the fintech industry
Yeah.
holds. It's not the one with the traditional financial world. It's more of a
No,
tech
that's
company
correct.
that simply happened to operate within the financial system. That's it.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, like we you mean you look around and I just think like it's a generational problem. I think like I'm young, so I've lived in a world where I've known nothing but digitization and no borders. I live in a world where I can buy a flight to Europe for £30. You
yeah,
know, I don't live in a world where I have to worry for anything or anything like this, and that has given birth to a new breed of idea generation and a new breed of individual,
yeah,
one that's not so concerned with legacy in a wealth format, but legacy in terms of change. And I think
I agree.
a couple of the things really like that resonate with me the most about this industry and the opportunity we have here is an opportunity to genuinely make a difference. And I'm not talking about a difference to someone here. I'm not talking about a difference to somebody, even one person. We actually have the ability right now to change the world for the better forever. And I think it's not just going to be me or anyone. And I'm not saying that's what I'm doing in any sense, but as a community, we can. And I think society is edging towards critical mass. We're all sort of starting to wake up to the fact that we have been lied and cheated to for the last few thousand years. And all of what we know has actually been built on top of other people's lies. And it's come to the point now where we have something like coronavirus, and our civil liberties are being taken away by our governments for our protection. And I think this is the first time I've seen it where people will say, well, are you going to give that back? And that would never have happened before. And I think that is testament to the times, or a sign of the times we're living in. I think we're living in a time of great change. And I think for the individuals who are being born in today's world,
Yeah.
and the world that they will see will be a world that we would never have imagined. And my biggest concern, Omri, coming from a tech company owner, is technology. Is, are we going to automate
Thank
just
you.
too
I love
much?
this. I
And I
love
think,
this because technology is based on hacking human behaviors, which means that at the end of the day, even if the mission is good, it can create a lot of bad impact.
you mentioned earlier on the economy of data, right? And we are building a new economy ourselves, not one of cryptocurrencies, but one of data.
And that is
And
control as well. And it's scary as well. If you look at Amazon and like
exactly.
the recent documentary they've released on, just the sheer amount of data. You mentioned actually before we started the conversation about
Mm.
that camera that you can put on the
Oh, the
door.
Ringo.
The
The
Ringo.
Ring or something. Where's
Yeah, that
Ring or
one
something
is
called,
also
right?
owned by
Yeah, yeah.
Amazon. And,
Yeah.
in the US, they started giving access to the police without needing your consent or anything like that.
Exactly.
That
I
is
mean,
quite scary. I have to say, for
I give,
someone who was born in an
yeah,
age where, at the end
where
of the
that
day,
didn't
of course, there
happen.
were rules and everything. Of course, there were rules. But, you also have your private life.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. You can walk down the street without someone looking at you on their phone, right? I mean, we can touch on like Cambridge Analytica will be probably the more like legally allowed thing to touch on, right? And
yeah.
they famously use data on Facebook to manipulate elections, and
But
whether or not it did manipulate elections, who really
But
knows?
that's the thing.
But
People speak about Cambridge Analytica, and it's like, of course, the implication of that were massive, and I'm not trying to dismiss it
yeah,
by any, stretch of imagination.
I
But I
think I know
don't
what you're
find
going to
it
say
that
there.
surprising. And also, like, so, they
You
use the
know,
data to do that, and then you check it how they use the data. It's like, you know what? The same way that Cambridge Analytica applied it to the election, children are applying it to cyberbullying in a school. Like,
yeah,
it's the same exact. Like, it's not
and they're not even the biggest.
sophisticated. Exactly, it's
They're
not
not even the
sophisticated.
biggest.
It's quite
like
like,
it was very, very primitive ways
yeah.
of it was early days of data harvesting, really, and using data to manipulate
Yeah.
human behavior.
Do you
But I
think?
think now I
I don't
think it was
think it
kind of
was that
the
early. Like, I
I
think
mean
if you read
I
UX
think
design,
from a digital perspective, like I mean we take like Facebook as such, it was
hmm,
it was an accident waiting to happen. Like you put everyone's
yeah,
details and all your lives on there, of course someone was going to do that. And what I meant by it was early in a sense that it was shocking to us for where we were at the time, but it went on for years. When I think 2013 when they started those apps, right, where you would play the games and then it would take all your friends list data, and that's
yeah. And do
that's
you
how it
remember?
started.
And at the time, those app had the right to post on your page for you. I don't know if you
Yep,
remember that,
yep.
but
They can't. Yeah, now
uh,
they can't, and it
now they
clearly says
can't
that now.
exactly.
Yeah,
But at the time,
yeah, yeah,
they could even post for you. So you would go on your page, and then suddenly one of those other pages that you followed or went up
exactly.
posted for you. Yeah, that was crazy.
But as a lawyer, I imagine this is a particularly interesting thing for you, right? Is, think of it like this: is how do you actually adhere to law online in a digital world where there's no police? Well, in a weird way, you
But
need to
see,
have intranets.
but I
Like
think that's
you
a
kind of have to
misleading
centralize it.
interpretation of what the law is there for. Okay, so
Mm,
I think the police is an enforcement body, right?
yeah,
Like for example, the court. But the law is there to act, if you want, in my opinion. Okay,
yeah,
is there to act as an example. It's basically the social contract that stands between people that
of
are,
course.
living within a certain jurisdiction, which is governed by a certain law. So
Yeah,
allegedly, it should reflect the position that these individuals have with respect to the different bit of our lives. And for
yeah,
example, in Gibraltar, if you look at it, it's a jurisdiction that wants to be very forward thinking, very technologically savvy, but at the same time, they want to protect the consumer. Hence, the DLT regulations, for example, and being like
exactly.
among the first one, it tends to reflect the strategy of a country and the opinion that thrive in that country and what that country
Mm,
is going for. The police online, and online, of course, it's very hard to monitor
mm,
online behaviors.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, that is kind of the thing is how do you police the internet? Like, how do you ensure like things are actually going on? I mean,
yeah,
you take right now, Ian Wright yesterday, he came out and it's absolutely disgusting. He was a victim of racial abuse on Instagram. He got a bunch of direct messages, like pathetic behavior, right? But how do you stop them from doing that? Do you get them to upload their documentation to open accounts? But then all of a sudden,
yeah,
you've got this kind of fine line between. I'm sure the cypherpunks probably wouldn't be too happy about it.
yeah, of course.
But I mean, in terms of like, how do you adhere to law online when you can't police it? The police are there to enforce the law. I mean, not all law. You have,
Maybe
you
you,
know,
may,
laws in all kinds of different
yeah,
society. But and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just saying. I mean, in terms of like, you have the idea of racism right now is massive. I'm a big football fan, although I'm crap at the sport. I think like the football world right now, they have a bad game, and unfortunately, players are racially abused afterwards.
yeah,
And how do you stop that? Do you make people have to upload proof of identification when they open accounts, which has a big data protection issue in itself because
yeah,
you get hacked all of a sudden. You've got the passports, driver's licenses, proof of addresses of near enough everybody, but you're also giving control of your data, which is even things like your passport, into the hands of central entities like Facebook, who own things like Instagram, which have also had a bad track record of keeping
yeah.
our data safe in the past. So it's quite hard to ask people to go out there and
Well,
say, look,
that's why education, really, in my opinion, is the solution.
100%.
Like that's the only rather than the carrot and the bat. I see that
Exactly.
honestly, I've changed a lot since I started to appreciate more the value of education, and I think that change is universal in human being.
Yep.
Many people don't care about certain things, and then as they start informing themselves about the topic, they grow fond of it and they appreciate it more. And that applies to everything. For me, like for example, I just started watching a documentary on Formula One. I never cared about Formula One, but now I start
Yeah.
to appreciate it and I start to respect it. In the same way, I think, the more information and the more empathy people can develop through that information, hopefully the less these episodes will
Yeah.
occur, But we are flawed. We are,
I mean, part of our problem is like a great example, right, is you take like Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, right? You
yeah,
have Protestants and Catholics, and you've got kids today that grow up and they're Protestant, they say, I hate Catholics, and you've got Catholics that grow up today and they say, I hate Protestants. It's, well, why? Oh, because my mum and dad told me, right? And
I
so a
know,
lot of it
but
is a human issue, right?
of course, yeah.
And which you can't change because you need to educate the parents before they educate the
You need to
children.
remove history, which is what I said before,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
unfortunately it carries a lot of hatred.
Exactly. But I think there's a famous saying, those who don't learn from history are just doomed to repeat it, right? And I think,
Yeah, but then those that learn
unfortunately,
from history become emotional about it if they're involved. It's always
but
easy to learn history when you're not involved. And I'm half Israeli and I lived in Israel, and I
yeah,
have to say that it was such a different experience learning
yeah,
about the conflict whilst I was living in Italy and then leaving the conflict when I was there.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
hard to remain impartial. It's how can you do
100%.
that? It's
How can you do that? Exactly it. And it becomes down to a human problem. And it's something that other humans have to speak to those other humans to fix, right?
yeah.
It takes kind of like societal change. And I think, we're in that time now where the information available online is far like outweighing now what you can have available to your face. I think, that you go online, you could literally learn about anything. You can
Yeah, I agree.
learn
Even better
quant
than at uni. First, I told you
even
I
yeah,
was. Yeah,
yeah,
I
you
agree.
can learn
Completely
so
agree.
much, like, and without being disrespectful to some people, but I look back at the people who I went to school with, who went to university, and I was like, well, if you can get to university, it can't all be that good, right? Because with all due respect, not some
Well,
of them
it's also
people were
what
not
you make out of it.
right,
It's like
100%
they
that. But
could
then it
give you
goes
the
back
tool.
to a
If you
human
don't build
thing.
anything, that's up to you. I think.
Exactly, you can give a man a fish, but you can teach a man to fish
Exactly.
and eat for a
Access,
lifetime,
like
right?
universal access, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think like right now where society is at, we're kind of at the point now where nothing is ever going to be the same, and I think that is all driven by education. We are now being educated in more areas than we ever are. You mentioned the Joe Rogan Experience, right?
Yeah,
The Joe Rogan Experience is powerful, right? The
it's
powerful
incredible. Yeah,
JRE, and why? Because he has no one's there to tell him what he can and can't say,
yeah.
right? And you look at the topics he speaks about, and he touches on quite a lot that I've touched on today. I mean, he has a lot more time to kind of explore those ideas and try
Yeah,
to
and also
resonate, but
access to people.
and he has a ridiculous access, yeah, to people.
Yeah,
But do you know what he's doing? He's given people a platform that were once not
Of course,
allowed a
yeah. Many
platform.
many times
And
he disagrees with them, but yet it doesn't
yeah,
mean that he's limiting that. I love the fact that he always plays the well. To be fair with you, this is why Blockchain Rock was born. I'm not saying that I'm Joe
yeah,
Rogan by any stretch of
yeah.
imagination, but it was
But
inspired by that. Having conversation with people, asking them their point of view, learning from them. He does it. I'm sure that he does it brackets for a selfish reason. He does it because he
yeah,
wants to improve himself as a person,
yeah.
becoming more aware and learn. So I think
Yeah.
that's yeah.
But I think what you do very similar actually is you're very good at maintaining the flow of the conversation, which he does.
Thank
He's
you.
almost like a director, because I'm a scatterbrain, right? I'm a scatterbrain. I have so much going on at one time that I talk and it goes in different directions. I've got so much to share that I find it hard to put structure to what I want to say.
Yeah.
And I think what he does very well, and I notice what you do very well today, is
Thank
allowing the
you.
individual to explore what they want to say, but also make sure they don't overstep the mark. And a perfect example of who he done that with, I'm not sure if you've seen it, is Alex Jones and Graham Hancock, right?
I
You
don't
got
think
two
I've seen it.
people on the widest ends of the spectrum.
Wait, was
You've
it the
got
one about the carnivore? No, sorry, the vegan documentary. No, it wasn't that.
no.
No, no.
Graham Hancock is he's a Scottish author. He's born in Edinburgh, but he has an English accent. And he is the guy who first proposed that there is a missing chapter of human history. He's an
Oh,
archaeologist, and he wrote a lot of amazing books, which originally were called conspiracy theories, but have since been proven. And things like, for example, in the 90s when he first wrote the book, there was a thing hadn't been discovered yet, and that thing was Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe is a megalithic site in Turkey, and it's the oldest known megalithic site to date, 50 times larger than Stonehenge, far more complex. But it wasn't that's interesting. Is well, how did they do it? But secondly, they had drawings of agriculture and crop harvesting. Yeah, we didn't think. And Göbekli Tepe, yeah,
yeah. They
that
say agriculture. What was it? 10,000 years ago or 12 when they
yeah,
started first settling down. No, that's the
and
universal.
and Göbekli Tepe is over 20,000 years old. It's the
Wow.
oldest known use of agriculture to this date. But it
But what
doesn't
if
stop
it wasn't
there.
a controlled thing? Well, like, look, let's just progress
Thank
through.
you.
Let's just progress through this, okay? Because we're not gonna go back to,
Yeah.
to how you started blockchain.
I
That's
won't. I won't. I
for
won't.
another episode. But what I'm
But
trying
the
to
point is right.
wait,
Is
I
he
have this
before?
question that I
Oh,
wanted to
go
follow
on.
up. So,
Sorry.
what if it wasn't something that was planned or controlled? If you
It
think
wasn't.
about it, medieval, for example, right? If we
Yeah.
didn't have the humanism and illuminism period where people rediscovered all of the classical Greece and Roman,
Yeah.
all of you can see it also in TV series like Vikings,
Yeah.
where they walk next to statues and they wonder who made those, like
Yeah.
a previous alien race or something like that, because they did
Yeah.
not know how
Nope.
to build them. They did not have those skills. So I think without humanism and illuminism and all of this return to to the knowledge that was created
Yeah.
during Greece and the Roman Empire time, then that potentially we could still be in the medieval time. Potentially we could still be controlled by a church or by another institution, and
Well,
we could still be very ignorant. So is it so hard to believe that maybe there was something before, maybe there was agriculture, but maybe without being
but,
controlled, maybe it went
but
lost?
but what the question is most people would say, yeah, but they didn't have computers or plastic. But
Well,
maybe
you
they
don't know
didn't. Maybe
that,
that's.
but
But the thing is when you dig up, right? We dig archaeological sites all the time, and when they dug Göbekli Tepe, they found no waste. They found no evidence of how it was built. They didn't even find any drag marks for the stones, right? This is what Graham Hancock proposes, and a few others. Randall Carlson is probably the more famous. What's the name for the person?
is it esoteric?
Geologist, is it?
Oh, sorry.
Geologist, person who studies rocks, whatever the guy's called. I can't remember what their name.
Geologist.
I think, yeah, geologist. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it is a geologist. What he proposes is that, well, perhaps advanced to us is a computer or plastic or flight, but advanced to them might not have been that. And we may have
Possibly.
advanced far beyond this, and there was a cataclysmic event, and we have been restarted. But Graham Hancock was, every time he tried to get the book published, he was rejected after they've read the first draft. But then he did get the book published, and best-selling author, New York Times bestseller, and
Yeah, but
he proposed it. But what I was going to say was Joe Rogan has allowed that man to
To have a
influence
platform.
modern day society.
Yeah.
And although he's 70 plus years old and his work is 30 years ago, a lot of the science of today has proven his works. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe solidified what he had originally said in Magicians of the Gods, which is that there was a more advanced civilization before, but perhaps maybe not in this way.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Joe,
possibly.
Joe,
Maybe
Joe
socially they
Rogan
were
had
more
it,
advanced. There were some civilizations that
socialist,
now we know about, which socially were more advanced than us. They treated crimes in a different way. They had a
yep,
different concept of legality. Like, I agree. Have you ever
and they
watched
all meditated.
yeah, they all meditate. But have you ever watched Battlestar Galactica?
No, I haven't actually.
Man,
I
you
actually
should,
haven't.
because the end of that TV series is. Trust me, if you like this type of, just watch
Yeah.
it. Okay, I don't want to spoiler it much. But look, just for the sake, this is, first of all, you win the title officially. This is by far the longest episode we've ever recorded, and so to bring it back, I wanted to ask you. So you went to Bitstock, correct? And that's where
Mhm.
you learned about
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And so what about now? What's of course, you here and there you managed to talk extensively about Australis and what you're doing as well. So I'm
Yeah.
interested about you going forward now. So
Yeah.
what's your mid to long term strategy, let's say, or what's your vision for the future? What are you, which direction are you heading to?
In terms of Australis or myself? Both?
Both, I would say. I would probably
Yeah.
argue that
Yeah.
Australis is part of where you're heading as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Massively. So we're about to be making some big changes. And there's a lot of things I'd love to say right now.
Don't,
Like,
don't, don't. I
but
don't
there's
want this to
something
be.
that I just can't. But we've grown a lot since we first started, and we've been somewhat legitimized at this point in a sense by the fact that we are still around, and we're building a project that no one has really done it the same way before. There's been plenty of similar concepts, and
Mhm.
we're, I guess, a mashup of multiple concepts in one. But there is a kind of a difference to the way we've approached it, rather than others. And we've not focused on the how, we focus on the why, and we've very much, I guess, adopted the principle that we've spoke about a lot. It's, if we take what everyone's done so far in the industry, it's been amazing, right? And the industry's been in a phasical process. First of all, we needed to decide, what the hell are we going to do this for? Well, what the hell are we using this for? And so, I don't know, we're going to use a financial instrument. And so we had exchanges. Exchanges were born. And the second phase of the industry was, exchanges are great, and we're making plenty of money, but now people are starting to not really see this as an investment anymore.
Yeah,
And people are starting to see this as a method of transaction. We obviously spoke about the pitfalls of the trade
of
element of
course.
it. But people are now starting to think of, all right, crypto is not going away, so let's make it better and more usable. And we are entering the age of utility. And where Australis is going next, and the journey that we're taking, is to bring as many usable products for the ordinary individual to the cryptocurrency world as possible, so that we don't need to convince you to use crypto. You can just use exactly what you're doing right now, but you just don't realize you're being underpinned by cryptocurrencies. And the goal of Australis is to first obviously embrace where we are at right now, which is,
Mhm.
we use Bitcoin, we use cryptocurrencies. We're not neglecting it. We're not trying to be too ahead of our time, but we are trying, in a sense, to open the doors to people that perhaps never would have considered cryptocurrency before, but would open a Monzo account. They
So
would
you want
open
to
a Starling
incentivize
bank
cultural
account.
shift.
Exactly. And challenger banks have done that massively,
Yeah.
massively. We've seen that huge. I mean, I don't even have a real bank account. I only use challenger banks. I think the only real bank account I have is with Yorkshire Bank, which is not exactly like a blue chip financial institution here. I use Monzo. I use Starling Bank. I use Tap. I use things which resonate with me, and I think the consciousness of humanity is changing to be more aligned with what the individual wants and what is best for the person. It's now no longer, my nan opened me a Lloyd's account, so I'm going to be a Lloyd's customer till I die. It's, well, hang on a second. They're giving me 2% interest over there. Why don't I switch my money across?
Yeah.
And with Australis and where we're going is, we want to replicate what the existing financial system did for us, which is utilities. We can actually use it. We can transact with this. We can save with this. We can gift this. We can spend on this piece of credit card, or we can get some cash out. We want to replicate what we've done, but improve it by ensuring that the individual has sovereignty of its wealth. So
Yeah.
a few of the ways we're doing that is, we are working on, integrations for our debit card model, individual ring fenced IBANs for client accounts. So when they send their fiat, they own their money in a
Are
sense,
you
I
able to
guess.
say all of this, or
I can say this. Yeah, this is all
okay?
cool. I don't want to say it in a bit someone can copy. That's
Exactly.
what
I
I'm
don't want
worried
you to.
about.
I don't want you to explain how. I want people to follow Australis, and I want people to see how you will bring this idea to life.
Yeah.
So, if it's okay for you, just
Yeah,
tell me a
totally.
bit about, like, to close as well. Let's say, because the time is
Yeah,
becoming really long.
100%.
But
I've kept you on conspiracies for too long.
no. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy. I love having episodes which are different. Also, by the way, as we
Yeah,
spoke about conspiracy, really just weaving in a lot of topics that actually we previously discussed with other guests, from
yeah,
economic freedom to unit of account to.
yeah.
So the last question I have for you is: what are you most excited, aside from, of course, Australis bringing all
Yeah.
of this, to the public? What are you most excited about right now in terms of what's to come? It
Mm.
can be technology. For example, I'm super excited about mixed reality and immersive technologies. But what
Yeah.
are you excited about? It can be something personal. It can be, what's next, basically.
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the world truly see and appreciate all the hard work that everybody in this industry has been putting in since 2009, because we have all laid the foundations. Some people
Yeah.
big bricks. You mentioned names like John Matonis, right?
Yeah.
And others small bricks, right? But we've all laid bricks, and the foundations of this industry are being set right now. The success of this industry is being set right
Okay.
now, and I'm most excited now that cryptocurrency is becoming slowly more mainstream. That people are now actually going to question the existing system and look for a better alternative. And where the excitement comes from that is there is billions of minds that are about to flock to this space. Some of which are some of the brightest minds in the world in existence, and some of which are the brightest minds in the world that haven't yet been discovered. And I think the cryptocurrency community and the sense of community that it truly actually has unifies like-minded people together. And we are about to attract some of the most intelligent minds from across this world to join this fight, which we are all a part of, and actually be able to truly bring about, one, real change, but secondly, true economic freedom for the globe. And that's not going to be done by a government. That's not going to be done by a bank. That's not going to be done by companies like Australis. That's going to be done by the individuals that will begin using this technology
Yeah.
that we are all building. And
Which
I think
collectively, exactly. It's an individual, but a collective movement made by individual. Yeah.
Australis is not like a unique idea. Australis is an alternative vision of an existing idea. I have taken what other people have done and have people have been doing for a long time,
Yeah.
and I'm attempting to make it better.
Of
And
course.
by
Which is
doing
the
so,
very
it's
fundamental principle of how you create. Creation doesn't come from void, it comes from experiences plus that
exactly.
added value that is the individual.
Exactly. And so that is what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited to with Australis to give these individuals a method of existing in a digital world, and we're not going to just stop by the facilitation of debit cards or the purchasing or investing in crypto. The journey of Australis is going to go far beyond that. There is a few things that are in the pipeline. You mentioned augmented reality. One thing I can touch on is we are building an augmented reality system so you can see food at a restaurant before you visit it. I think we
Yeah.
mentioned this when we met in London,
I think so. Yeah.
and we're in a sense trying to, not just in a cryptocurrency sense, but more of in a technological perspective. We are trying to just improve the way we exist, but
Yeah.
not compromising your sovereignty by doing it. We want to give the power to you, the individual. Australis is there for you, the individual. We want to allow the individual to thrive, not the corporate world. And I think the method that we have in doing so at Australis, has not compromised on business technique, business strategy. We still adhere to everything that we should do. We've done everything in a very legally sound way, as you know. We've
Yeah.
done legals before we've even launched. And the reason why is because we're a company and we owe a sense of duty and responsibility to
Yeah,
our
to your
users.
customers. Yeah.
To one, protect them, but two, to deliver on what we say. And I have had first-hand experience in existing in places, working in places where the idea that you have and the offering you sell is not always the offering you deliver. And that is a corporate responsibility. And I think now that I'm, I guess, so in the driver's seat, I want to bring about the change that I wanted to see when I wasn't in this seat. And that might be a detriment to profit. That might be a detriment to monetary value. But I'm determined with this to leave behind a world that is different to the one that I was born in. And I want to give other individuals a method and a platform through Australis to do the exact same thing. Because unless you can light the fire in somebody else, the fire never truly burnt within you. So I believe in igniting those flames. And I think Australis is going to be a big, big step to show people, look, there is an alternative way of doing things. You can do things with the people in mind, and there is proof of it.
But that was beautiful. So I'll just close the episode here. I thought it was amazing.
I think it's mate, I really appreciate it, man.
Adam,
Honestly,
thank you so much for coming
awesome.
on. It was a super interesting conversation. It was great to finally make this happen. It's been in the pipeline for some time.
My fault, man. My fault. 100%
The forces
my
of the
fault.
universe have tried to hold us apart, but finally we managed to record this.
Hey, man, I need to check the moon calendar. When I incorporated Australis in the UK on November 5th, it was the best day that month on the moon calendar. Every release we do, every major milestone we do with Australis is done the moon calendar. So there is like the ancient belief that the astronomical lineup
I'm familiar with it.
what the space looks like determines how it is. So every
also in
release
agriculture,
we do,
no? Biodynamic agriculture and all that. Man, we can't do this. We're going to be here another 2 hours.
This is not for the podcast. This is just for afterwards. I'm just curious. I'm going to check what the Tuesday 12th of May is actually like on the moon calendar, because
we need to say goodbye first, because otherwise we can't close the episode. So we need to say goodbye and then close the episode. So all of that is part of the episode, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's cool, man. No worries. No, we'll check the moon calendar.
Thank you so much. I will.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro. Honestly, I really appreciate it. I think your podcast is great. It's awesome because
thank you so much.
One thing I think is super, super cool about Blockchain Rock is you guys are getting the people on that people need to hear from, right? You're not getting like celebrities of the space, which are going to come on and have kind of narrow-minded opinions, in my honest, influencer hate kind of rage here. But the people that you bring onto Blockchain Rock are, one, great quality guests, and also the users. You guys have the users in mind. You're giving people a direct channel to the people they need to hear from, and that is a beautiful thing.
Thanks a lot, Adam. It really does mean a lot. I'm sure that Noel and Anthony would agree. It means a lot to us.
Honestly, killing it, man.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it, man. It was great having you on, and we look forward to having you again once the Australis is out, and then we can speak about the nitty-gritty of the platform without being, concerned about anyone stealing the idea.
July, we'll be done. July.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it too, man.
Thank you very much. Bye, Adam.
Cheers, Norrie, bro. Bye-bye.